Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're taking deep dive into a market that, well, might not be top of mind for most people,
Uh-huh.
but its scale and projected growth are genuinely surprising.
Mm,
We're looking at the global exterior wall putty powder market.
that's right. It might sound really specific, maybe even a bit, mundane.
Yeah.
But as we get into the data from this report, you'll see it's actually fundamental, a key part of the massive global construction and finishing industry.
Okay.
Think of it like this. Exterior wall putty powder. It's the stuff that creates that smooth, even surface on walls before you paint or apply other finishes.
Right. Essential for getting a quality exterior facade.
Exactly. Absolutely essential.
And our mission for this deep dive is really to get straight to the heart of the data. We're pulling numbers from excerpts of a report called Global Exterior Wall Putty Powder Market Growth Projections.
Mm-hmm.
We want to unpack what these numbers actually reveal about the scale, the key insights, and maybe some surprising regional dynamics within this market.
Sounds like a solid plan. So let's set the stage first. The global picture. How large is this market overall?
Right, the global overview. So the report shows us that back in 2021, this market was valued at just over $2.66 billion.
Wow. Over $2.5 billion
Yeah.
for putty powder.
Yeah.
That's definitely a number that makes you pause, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Makes you realize the sheer volume of construction activity happening that needs this stuff.
And the projections, they show pretty significant expansion. By 2025, it's expected to grow to around $3.45 billion.
Okay.
Looking further out, say to 2033, the projection jumps again. It's over $5.8 billion.
So basically doubling in value between 2021 and 2033,
Pretty much.
which translates to a compound annual growth rate, a
Mhm.
CAGR, about 6.7%. Yeah, 6.721% across that entire period.
That's a pretty robust growth rate. It suggests strong ongoing demand worldwide.
It really does. It highlights how even these, foundational building materials are part of these dynamic, multi-billion-dollar global markets.
So if that's the global trend, where's the growth concentrated? Let's maybe transition into breaking these numbers down region by region.
Sounds good. Where should we start our regional tour? North America, maybe.
Yeah, let's head to North America first. The report indicates the regional revenue there was roughly $765 million in 2021, around $764.7 million.
Okay, central.
And that's projected to climb to about $964 million by 2025,
Right.
and then exceed $1.57 billion by 2033. That gives North America a regional KGR of around 6.3%, a significant market contributing solidly to that global growth figure.
And within North America, it looks like the United States is clearly the dominant force.
Right, definitely.
Its market alone was over $608 million back in 2021,
Yeah.
and it's projected to go past $1.23 billion by 2033. The CAGR there is just over 6.2%.
Canada follows a much smaller market overall, but actually with a slightly higher growth rate.
Oh, interesting.
Started at about $101 million in 2021, projected to more than double to over $217 million by 2033. That's a CAGR of roughly 6.7%.
Okay, higher than the U.S. rate then. And Mexico.
Mexico rounds out the main three highlighted. Started at $55 million in 2021, expected to reach nearly $118 million by 2033. Its CAGR is about 6.5%.
So North America showing strong, steady growth, just a touch below the overall global average rate, but still very solid.
Exactly. Okay, so how does Europe compare? Maybe a more established market. How does it stack up?
Europe was also a really significant market, valued at around $583 million in 2021.
Right, and projecting to reach about $736 million in 2025
Mm-hmm.
and exceeding $1.22 billion by 2033. The European regional CAGR comes in at about 6.5%.
So pretty much right around that global average growth rate.
Yeah, seems like it.
And the report breaks down several European countries. The UK market, for instance, was around $64 million in 2021, growing to over $139 million by 2033.
Okay.
Germany was larger. It started at about $112 million, projected to reach nearly $248 million by 2033.
And Germany's growth rate actually stands out a bit, doesn't it? Within the major European economies listed, I mean.
It does.
Showing a KGR of about 6.9%. That's the highest among the specifically mentioned European countries in this report.
That's interesting. Germany leading the pack there.
Mm-hmm.
France was also substantial, started around $60 million, expected to grow to over $115 million by 2033.
Right. Italy was smaller, starting under $28 million and projected to reach nearly $49 million.
Okay, and Russia.
Russia had a market of about $74 million in 2021, projected growth to over $145 million by 2033.
Right. Then you have Spain, Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, all kind of in that $20–40 million initial range.
Yeah, exactly. All showing solid growth trajectories, generally doubling or a bit more than doubling their starting size by 2033.
And here's something really fascinating from the European numbers. There's this rest of Europe segment.
Ah, the catch-all.
Right, covering all the countries not individually listed. It actually shows the highest CAGR of any regional subsegment mentioned anywhere in the report globally.
Really? Higher than countries like India or China.
Well, higher than any segment mentioned. It comes in at over 7.38%. This segment alone grows from about $107 million in 2021 to over $257 million by 2033,
Wow.
which suggests really widespread, maybe even faster-paced growth across lots of smaller markets in the region.
That rest of Europe number is definitely a surprise. Okay, let's shift focus. Asia Pacific, often an engine of global market growth. How does it fare here?
Well, no surprise, Asia-Pacific is indeed the powerhouse in this particular market.
Hmm.
It was the largest region by far back in 2021, market size over $966 million.
Almost $1 billion just there, and it's expected to really solidify that lead.
Absolutely. Projected to grow to about $1.26 billion in 2025,
Okay.
and then a massive $2.22 billion by 2033. And crucially, its regional CGR is about 7.36%.
Making it the highest regional growth rate globally.
That's right. That's where the fastest overall regional growth is projected.
And where does it get really interesting within APAC? China, I assume.
China is, as you'd expect, a massive component. Started at nearly $377 million in 2021. Projected to exceed $900 million by 2033. That's a strong CAGR too, 7.77%.
Japan's also a significant player, right? Marked at around $108 million in 2021, expected to reach over $230 million by 2033.
Correct. But the real standout growth story, globally it seems, might be India.
Ah, okay. Tell me about India.
Started at nearly $174 million in 2021. Its market is projected to basically explode, relatively speaking. Nearly $430 million by 2033.
Wow, that's a big jump. What's the CAGR?
The CAGR is 7.86%. That's the highest country-specific growth rate highlighted in these report excerpts.
Incredible. That likely reflects just massive infrastructure spending and rapid urbanization, wouldn't you think?
Almost certainly. That kind of growth points to huge potential ongoing in its destruction sector.
Absolutely noteworthy. Southeast Asia also contributes significantly, growing from about $145 million in 2021 to over $319 million by 2033.
Right. And then there's the rest of APAC segment. It's large in value, starts over $696 million.
Okay.
And reaches nearly $1.3 billion by 2033. Although interestingly, its CAGR is 4.68%.
Which is the lowest among all the segments we've mentioned.
Exactly. Suggests perhaps more mature or slower growing markets within that specific group compared to, say, China or India.
Got it. Okay, moving South America. The regional market was smaller in 2021, about $154 million.
Yeah, $154.4 million.
But it shows very healthy growth, projected to reach around $242 million in 2025 and over $412 million by 2033.
Right, and the regional CGR there is about 6.9%.
So actually faster than North America or Europe on average.
That's right. And the report specifically mentions Brazil as the leading market in South America.
Okay, what are the Brazil numbers?
Growing from nearly $54 million in 2021 to over $146 million by 2033.
Solid growth there too.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, the Middle East. This region had a market value of about $121 million in 2021.
Expected to grow to around $158 million in 2025 and reach over $235 million by 2033.
And the regional CAGR?
It's about 5.18%. Which is, somewhat slower growth compared to most of the other regions we've discussed.
Still growing, but not quite at that global average pace. Saudi Arabia is highlighted as the leader there.
Yes, starting at about $48 million in 2021 and projected to reach over $95 million by 2033.
Okay. And finally, let's look at Africa. The market here was valued at approximately $72 million in 2021.
About $72.4 million, yeah.
Projecting to increase to around $94 million in 2025 and reaching over $146 million by 2033. The regional CGR is about 5.7%.
Right, so similar kind of growth story to the Middle East. Solid, but relatively slower compared to the global pace overall.
Still expanding considerably in absolute terms, though.
Oh, absolutely. And the report specifically calls out Nigeria and South Africa. Nigeria's market grows from roughly $18 million in 2021 to over $37 million by 2033.
Okay.
While South Africa starts larger, about $31.6 million, projected to reach nearly $63 million by 2033.
So bringing all these numbers together now, what's the big takeaway?
Well, I think it's clear this market for exterior wall putty powder is substantial. We're talking billions globally right now.
Right. And projected for really significant continued growth over the next decade or so.
Absolutely. And Asia-Pacific is the undisputed leader, both in sheer market size and, importantly, holding the highest regional growth rate.
While North America and Europe are also major markets, with growth rates kind of hovering around that global average.
Yeah, although Europe has that interesting little kicker with the rest of Europe's segment, showing that really high growth.
That's true. That was surprising. And then you have the standout growth stories within specific countries. India's remarkably high TGR.
Right, Germany leading the growth among the big European economies mentioned.
And just the sheer scale of markets like the US and China fundamentally shaping the global picture.
Exactly. While regions like the Middle East and Africa, they're smaller in sale for this specific product anyway.
And shows slightly more moderate growth rates relative to the global average.
Though, as you said, still expanding considerably in absolute dollar terms.
So this raises an important question, maybe for you, the listener. What does digging into the numbers for a product like exterior wall putty powder actually tell us?
It's kind of a look beneath the surface, isn't it? Beneath the surface of just general global economic activity.
Exactly. The surprising scale of this, seemingly niche market, the different growth trajectories in different parts of the world.
It all points to those underlying drivers we talked about. Things like urbanization, population increases, renovation cycle.
Big infrastructure projects happening across the globe.
Right. These numbers, they aren't just abstract figures floating around. They really reflect tangible building and development activity happening on the ground in cities and countries worldwide.
So we've taken a pretty deep dive into the market for exterior wall putty powder today. We went from the global billions down to the more nuanced growth stories in regions and countries.
And revealed a market that's, well, far more significant and dynamic than you might initially assume.
It's a great example, I think, of how looking at seemingly specific, maybe even mundane products can offer real insights into broader global economic and development trends.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
So, given these projections, this uneven but pretty much universally positive growth, what does this substantial market activity in something like putty powder really tell us about where the world is fundamentally building and investing for the future? It's something to ponder the next time you pass a construction site, maybe?
Okay, let's dive in. You've shared some really interesting source material with us. And for this deep dive, we're focusing on something maybe a bit unexpected, the exterior wall putty powder market.
Yeah, it sounds super specific, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You might wonder, why focus on that?
Exactly. But looking through these sources, it's clear this stuff is, well, pretty important. It affects how buildings look, sure, but also how long they last, their environmental impact. It's quite central. So our mission here is simple. Pull out the key takeaways from these reports you sent over, give you that quick understanding, without needing to wade through all the dense data.
A shortcut to getting informed.
Precisely. So let's jump right in. What's actually pushing the growth in this market? What are the big drivers?
Well, what's really interesting is how it connects to these huge global shifts. The most obvious one, just the massive amount of construction happening globally, especially in emerging economies.
Right, more buildings going up.
Yeah, think rapid urbanization, big infrastructure projects. All these new buildings need finishing on the outside. It's foundational demand, really.
Okay, that makes sense. More walls equals more putty. But is it just about volume? Or is there more to it?
Oh, definitely more. That ties straight into the second major driver, this growing focus on building protection, longevity.
Protection.
Yeah, exterior walls take a beating, right? Sun, rain, temperature changes. This putty powder, when mixed and applied properly, creates that smooth, tough base layer. It protects against moisture getting in, stops those tiny cracks.
Ah, so it's less about looking good on day one and more about the long haul, reducing future repairs.
Exactly. It's about making the structure last, cutting down maintenance costs later, builders, property owners. They're starting to see that long-term value more and more.
An investment in durability, then.
Okay,
And you mentioned looks earlier, aesthetics. Is that still a big piece of the puzzle?
absolutely. That's the third key thing. There's
Hmm.
still this huge demand for really high-quality, visually appealing finishes on buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And Putty gives you that perfectly smooth canvas. You just can't get that premium paint job or that nice textured finish without a really solid, even base underneath. It kind of sets the stage for the final look. Still super important, commercially and residentially.
Okay, so we've got huge construction volume, this push for durability, and the need for things to look good, powerful drivers.
Yeah.
But where's the friction? What holds this market back from growing even faster? What are the main challenges?
Right, the restraints. Well, connecting to what you just said, price is a big one. Always is, isn't it? Particularly in markets where budgets are tight or on projects really focus on cutting costs.
So developers might skimp.
Sometimes, yeah, they might choose a cheaper, maybe less effective base coat, or even try to get away with fewer steps before the final paint. That immediate cost saving, it directly competes with the better quality putty products.
The upfront cost versus long-term quality dilemma. What else acts as a brake?
Environmental conditions.
Yeah.
Actually applying the stuff. This isn't something you can just, slap on during a heavy rainstorm or a heat wave.
Right. Extreme weather, too wet, too hot, too cold, it can really mess with how it cures. And that affects the final strength, the appearance. It needs the right conditions, which can lead to delays, sometimes even rework.
You can't rush the chemistry, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so price, weather. Are there other materials fighting for the same space? Alternatives.
Definitely. It's a competitive area. You've got things like ready-mix plasters, various types of cement fillers, even some synthetic renders. These are all different ways to prep a wall. Some might be faster, some cheaper, some maybe easier for specific situations. So yeah, there's competition.
Okay, so navigating those competing materials, dealing with unpredictable weather, and always that pressure on price, real challenges. But markets evolve, right? What trends are shaping the future here based on this material? How's it changing?
That brings up innovation. Yeah. The market's clearly responding to wider trends. Sustainability is a really big one now. Manufacturers are putting more effort into developing low VOC formulations.
Glovios. Yeah, fewer volatile organic compounds. Those are chemicals that can be bad for air quality, for the environment. This push comes from stricter building codes, but also just, growing awareness from everyone about environmental impact.
Makes sense. That aligns with trends across pretty much all industries. Any other key shifts?
Another interesting one is the rise of, let's call it the DIY segment.
Yeah.
And smaller contractors, too. They need products that are, well, easier to use, simple to mix, forgiving if you don't get the application perfect.
Oh, okay.
So that's driving innovation towards more user-friendly products, different packaging, clearer instructions, making professional-type results more achievable for more people.
So simpler products for a wider range of users, that actually expands the customer base quite a bit.
Exactly. And one last thing, digital transformation. It's hitting this space, too. E-commerce platforms are becoming, maybe surprisingly, quite relevant for selling building materials like putty powder.
Really? Online?
Yeah. It makes it easier for individual DIY folks, but also smaller building firms, to just order supplies online. It can
Yeah.
bypass traditional distributors, sometimes expands the reach.
Okay, fascinating. So we've covered the big drivers: construction booms, durability focus, the restraints, price, weather, competition, and these evolving trends like sustainability, making it easier for DIY, and even online sales. Quite a picture.
Right. And looking closely at something like exterior wall putty powder, it really does give you this unique window into those bigger trends. Construction methods, economic shifts, environmental stuff, even how people shop.
So to wrap this up, what's a final thought for our listener to maybe chew on? Something provocative.
Well, considering those conflicting pressures we talked about,
Yeah.
that constant push for lower costs versus the growing demand for durability, for greener products, for ease of use,
Yeah.
how is this market actually going to balance that? Delivering on price while also meeting these increasingly important, sometimes expensive priorities in the coming years. It's a core tension, really. That'll shape where it goes.
That's a great question to leave things on. Thanks for walking us through these sources. And to you listening, keep sharing your sources. We genuinely enjoyed digging into them with you.